All right, Nico, can you say, welcome to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies?
It's a happy episode. Happy babies.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I am your host, as well as the prenatal and pediatric chiropractor here at the CAP Wellness Center. And today's episode is all about your baby's brain and what your baby's brain really needs to grow and develop as healthy and as strong as possible. And Nancy Green is here to discuss this with us. I've known of Nancy's work at Brain Highways for years. It was years ago that some families in my practice had found her work, was having their older children do this work, and they were having profound changes with it. Specifically, these kiddos were having learning challenges, behavioral challenges, more in the kindergarten, first, second grade level, or age, I should say. And by doing this work and repatterning the brain and building different highways, these kids changed behaviorally and academically like really quick, really quick. It was amazing. And so I learned more about it, have sent families to it. But she has now developed a babies program, really looking at, okay, if these processes that she was doing with older kids are helping so much, how can we prevent these kids needing to do this work later on? What do they need in this first year to really grow and develop properly? And she looks at lower brain development. We're going to be talking a lot about the creep and the crawl and how important crawling is for brain development. And she's going to talk about the babies, what's involved in the babies program so that you can do it with your baby when they arrive, or if they're not yet walking and crawling and doing all that good stuff, on how to do it best. So I'm going to switch over to her conversation in a little bit, but let me have you listen to this message and then I'll introduce her. My online course, Connecting with Baby During Pregnancy, has been out for a while now, and I've been getting phenomenal feedback from you women who have been learning these prenatal bonding techniques, putting them to use, and having amazing results. The same kind of results that the women in the Rady study were getting, where by doing these techniques throughout pregnancy, they were having less anxiety and pain during labor. They're needing less obstetrical interventions, including less C-sections. And then afterwards, the babies are sleeping better, which means you're sleeping better. And postpartum depression was less than 1% in the moms who did these techniques. So go over to my website at drjwarren.com/CWB and learn all about it. I think this course is amazing. I put a lot of effort into it, and I think it'll really help you have a healthier, happier, and more relaxed pregnancy and a gentler yet powerful birth. My guest today is Nancy Green. She's the creator of the Brain Highways program, which began nearly 2 decades ago in the public schools. Today, though, Brain Highways is an on-site program for those here in the San Diego area and an international online program for participants throughout the world. Nancy's also led volunteer Brain Highways outreach programs with organizations such as Rady's Children's Hospital, and is currently collaborating with the American Academy of Pediatrics to reach underserved communities. Nancy really is a wealth of knowledge about brain development, specifically about brain development in babies and what they need in this first year, and you're going to get a ton out of this episode, I know it. So with no further ado, let me switch over to my conversation with Nancy. Hello, Nancy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Well, it's good. Yeah, I know it's been a couple of weeks since we did our first chat, but I'm really happy to have this time to talk with you and do an episode because I've known of your work and Brain Highways for a long time. It was some practice members, some families in my practice found your work to help their kids. They were kind of like on the 5 and 6 range, and I saw great changes in them. So I learned more about it and I've sent other families to you. But now being able to talk about your Brain Highways for Babies program is really exciting because there's a lot of parents that have a lot of questions about this kind of stuff. And I want to jump right in. So I appreciate that we finally got to connect and that you reached out to me.
That's great. And you're right. The baby part is the new part and that we're really excited about, to let people get the information from the get-go.
Great. And so I read your bio at the top of the show, and you've been doing this work for over 20 years. Take us back though to 20 years ago when you were working in the public schools. What kind of work were you doing, and how did this work evolve? Tell us that story.
Well, it really goes back, I'd say, 40 years ago. When
Oh,
I
okay.
first started working, I've always worked with at-risk kids. And so back then, makes me sound like a dinosaur, but the parents were often, unfortunately, heroin addicts, and maybe 15 to 20 people lived in a really small apartment. And there were other variables that made it seem really hard for these kids' lives. But back then, believe it or not, there wasn't a single kid that I worked with that were on meds or had a diagnosis. And so then it's about 15 years after that that I'm still working with at-risk kids.
Okay.
But these kids have parents that are upstanding citizens in the community, and they live in nice homes, and they have access to tutors and all kinds of help, and yet they're really struggling. So that's how I started thinking, what is going on here? And since I was a consultant in the schools, we started just with that question. I honestly didn't know the answer. But we started working with kids that were really struggling in school, um, and which led to the big discovery that so many of today's kids and adults have not finished their lower brain development, which is supposed to happen during the first year of life.
Okay.
And what that means is they didn't acquire basic brain functions that turns out are key to how the rest of our lives go, so that we don't struggle with things like anxiety and focus, reading, writing, coordination anymore. So that's how Brain Highways began in the schools. And then from there, it became really obvious to me that the parents, those are the ones that really needed to be involved to learning this information. So we began offering it at a center, and then it evolved into this whole international program.
Right. So circling back to that, like if a baby or a kid doesn't have what you're saying, lower brain development, we're going to talk more about that. You mentioned a couple of things, like what are the things that show up later on in the like 5, 6, 7 year olds that are indicators that that step was missed or that development wasn't properly formed?
They'll show up even before that. So a lot of parents who are concerned about their child not developing speech might very well be a big indicator that the lower brain wasn't developed.
Okay.
Because it's always a game of compensating. So if we don't get the ground floor in, and that's why it's going to show up differently in different kids, but then the higher centers of the brain don't get to do what they're supposed to do. They're so busy trying to figure out how to compensate for the incomplete lower brain development. So it'd be like, let's say tomorrow you have to do my job all day long.
Okay.
But you don't really know my job, right? So how
No,
good
I
are you
don't.
going to be at it?
Not very good.
That's so great. But then what you're already really great at, it's going to really impact your regular job because you're so busy trying to do mine. So it can fall apart at any stage depending on how well I figured out how to compensate, and if the ways I'm compensating don't alarm people. So a lot of times when parents will say, "Oh, my child's just really shy," that doesn't alarm people, but actually that's a real big indicator of incomplete PONS development. But if my kid is at preschool and throwing himself against the wall, people go, "Okay, something's wrong."
Right.
So it can go astray anywhere. Since we work with adults as well, our oldest participant has been 76 years old. Um, we may cover really well for a while. It may not show up until puberty, because that's already chaos to a well-organized brain. Or maybe I even get through that, and it's not until I have my second child that all of a sudden my compensations just can't get me through anymore. So we call it Plan B, when you can go back at any time in your life and get that lower brain development. But again, the baby program is let's do Plan A.
Okay. So plan A is like, let's develop this properly as it should right from the get-go. And
Right.
plan B is going back and recognizing, okay, we have a disturbance, a dysfunction of some kind, and we go back and we heal it. Is that?
Well, Plan B is the grace that we get. I'm so glad that brain development is such. Okay, so if you didn't get it the first time, you can go back and do this. The brain has the ability to change. The only thing that makes it more challenging with all the people that we've worked with over the years is, and I've never seen it not change, but depending on when you start Plan B, I don't get to give you back all the years you struggled. And that's the part that got me really thinking about more, let's just do Plan A. We can still teach you how to disable what we call unhelpful circuitry, but when you understand how the brain works, and if I'm put into like protection mode, which I will be, if my brain isn't functioning the way it's supposed to, then a whole bunch of other things happen, and it just seems unnecessary.
Right. So you're saying like if that development is stunted or impaired in some way, like the body, the brain will go into protection mode, and then the rest of those days and weeks and months and years forward are filtered through a protection mode rather than a growth mode. Is that correct?
More or less, right. So I don't look at it as a defect. I look at it as missed opportunity. So
Okay.
It's just like just waiting there, and I guess it's not happening today or tomorrow or the next day. But what happens is if we're still wired to have the lower brain dominate, and that's what happens when it doesn't finish developing, we are going to be more hypervigilant and think that everything is possible danger. And we are going to secrete more of the hormones that keep us in what we call protection mode, which then makes a lot of other things happen because I actually don't hear maybe what you said the way you said it. I think you're out to get me, which causes problems. I may do certain behaviors that help my brain, but trigger yours. So it becomes just kind of a mess that nobody gets. So we don't really think there's anything wrong with somebody. Matter of fact, we make a point of saying the opposite. And it doesn't matter to us if you have a diagnosis or you don't. The only word that we look at people who are walking around without their lower brain development is misunderstood. They're just misunderstood. Because when you understand what that development gives you or what I would then do if I don't have it, suddenly some of even the most bizarre behaviors make perfect sense.
Okay. So going back to like babies, like when ideally in a Plan A sense does this lower brain development start happening?
Day one, minute one. And it actually does without people realizing it. We are wired to connect. We're supposed to be in connection mode most of our life and only go into protection mode when there's real danger. So that baby is wired to come in the world to immediately connect with the mom, to connect with the baby. We're wired to do that. We've just messed with it. So it does begin with day one.
And what are the kinds of things that, babies really need in that day one going forward in that let's talk about in that first year of life, but starting at birth, what are the kinds of things that we can do to help?
Yeah, right. They just need the chance to do what the brain has always done for years. So if you think about it, the brain hasn't changed how it develops, but we've changed dramatically the first year of life. And a lot of the things that we think are so great, and they are from the perspective of, hey, I can go make dinner, baby's happy, or whatever, but it's not the bigger picture of what the baby needs. So there's quite a few reasons, but one of them is babies need unrestricted, that being the key word, time on their belly, on the floor. And the floor even needs to be a slick floor so that the brain can do what it's wired to do. So we can't really, as a parent, here I'm going to do this today and this is going to develop my child's lower centers of the brain. We just need to provide the opportunities that allow the brain to do what it's wired to do. And it's amazing that when we do it with, like I say, 10-year-olds or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds, the same process happens. We don't tell them how to do this because this part of the brain doesn't learn by instructions. It learns through touch, sensation, and movements. So it's pretty fascinating, but one of the so we have tummy time where people now talk about in terms of quantifying it for little bits of time. which is a great start, but really tummy time is the default position. So if we're clocking how much time our baby has the first couple months of life, it should be how much time he's not on the stomach, because that should be easier to calculate. So of course we're not going to change the going back to sleep recommendations, but babies need way more tummy time and this is the answer to get to the next stage. So a lot of people think tummy time is just to develop head control and a few other things. It's way more than that. The longer the baby's on its tummy, it's going to start to learn to move, especially if it's wearing the kind of clothing that's loose enough and a slick floor. But the movement that the baby does, which we call creeping, where it's the belly's on the floor, the stomach's on the floor, and at first it's a bare inch, then it's a little bit more pulling. Then if you watch it, one leg starts to move, and this is over time, this is over several months. Then another leg starts to move. There's a very distinct pattern that babies all over the world do. And like I say, in Plan B, we do the exact same sequence, even though nobody has a clue what it is. But those movements are so linked to whether or not we're going to have lots of anxiety later in life, or whether we can have the flexibility if something happens, we go back to connection. Those movements are key to focus. They are key to so many different things that have to do with actually how we're going to learn in school. So I don't think anybody today is even asking. They might say, well, did your baby do tummy time? They might say, has your baby started crawling yet? But I don't think people say, is your baby creeping?
Right.
And if we don't creep and we actually start crawling, we're probably going to crawl in a way that doesn't give us the functions. So it's not just crawling, it's not just about moving around, it's about getting the functions so that I can read with ease and joy later in life, so that I can shift gears without thinking such a big deal. So many functions, and we just have lost sight of it. We didn't have to know. Like I say, I'm the dinosaur here. My mom didn't know any of this. But way back then, you just put babies on the floor, folded some clothes, put them on the floor again. And so nature did what it was supposed to do. So today, we just have to be more cognizant to make sure that those opportunities are truly happening.
Can you connect the dots of how like creeping and crawling can affects your reading? Because a lot of parents are exactly like they think of tummy time as like back strengthening exercises, right? Like we want to have a strong baby, and sometimes, you know, that's enough of like, okay, I know it's supposed to be tummy time, but that leap of what you just said is like it's a key to like decreasing anxiety and focus and learning, adaptability is a big jump for lots of people. So how would you explain that to a parent?
Well, a couple of things is if we have these automatic functions, we don't even realize we have them. So for instance, if I can just make natural eye contact with you, and so many kids today cannot, I'm more interested in what brain function do I need to do that. So you may never have thought about that, but my eyes can just rest on you comfortably. What I'm actually using is my peripheral vision as anchors so my eyes can relax, versus if I had no peripheral vision, I'm like staring at you. So then the next question is, how do I get peripheral vision? Well, it turns out by certain primitive reflex movements that we do during that first year. But again, I have to be open in open space so that my body can do that, not in some kind of container. And then creeping. So when I get side vision, peripheral vision, it turns out I also need that for reading. I need that for sports, for following a ball to track it. So all these things are like layered, but they literally all trace back to the first year of life. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
And crawling gives us a different eye brain function that's imperative for reading and writing. We don't think about, but our two eyes have to team. They have to come together in space to land on a word at the exact same time to read it. Otherwise, one eye be reading a word to the left and one eye be reading a word to the right. So where do we get that skill? Turns out that comes as part of crawling. Lots of crawling. When crawling is done in the natural steps, it actually trains our brain how to make that kind of eye teaming movement. So those are just like, I'm not going to go on and on, but there's so many connections. And how do I know this for absolute certainty? We're over 14,000 people in Plan B. So
Right.
these people come to us with all these problems, and they do the lower brain development. And the second part of our program, which we haven't hit yet, on how you wire your nervous system so that it has the flexibility to go back and forth from protection to connection mode. All these things disappear, literally. Like, they literally, people can't believe it. And um, there is just that direct link, and most people haven't made that connection yet.
Right. I'll just share the story of one of the families that your work did great work with. It was their second child that they noticed that just was behaving differently than the first child, the older child. And it wasn't like things were horrible with him by any means, but he was not picking up reading as quickly as his brother did. And they were very cognizant of, like, all kids are different, so we're not going to compare him to his older brother. But he was having a lot of behavioral problems in first and second grade, getting in lots of fights. He was that kind of fidgety kid, didn't like doing school, was behind on academics type of stuff. And long story short, they found their way to Brain Highways. They were very, very diligent with the work, doing it daily and everything like that. And within 4 months, it was 4 months, this kid was totally different. Like, he wasn't getting into trouble at school. He had caught all the way up in his reading level in 4 months' time. It was amazing. And I do know other parents didn't get the same great results because they weren't as diligent with the work. Like, it's pretty intensive, but it works. And it was.
I'm gonna stop you on that. See that. So I take that when we say things are work, that actually, for many people, puts them into protection mode, because work doesn't sound to me. I've never worked a day in my life, because whatever I do, and it's joyful. But I understand. But so it's really not that it's work. What the difference is, because we have amazing results, and then there's a few people here and there, like you say, it's not the same. But what I see the difference is, and I'm not judging anybody, but there's a difference between, in the brain, and how we act, between being interested in something and being committed to something. If I'm interested in something, I'll do it when I have some time, right? I'm interested, but committed means, okay, for the next, because like you say, our program is only 1 2-month course and then another 2-month course. And the baby program's not even that. It's way, 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 way less. But it's the commitment saying, I'm going to make that time in 24 hours a day to make sure that we get this done.
Mm-hmm.
Because the good news is, it's then done for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It's not like going to the gym where I work out really hard and I finally get some muscles and I'm so proud, and then I don't go next week, and the next week, and by week 3 I'm back to the old body. Not so with Brain Highways. The highways you make, you get to keep them for the rest of your life. So when people get that kind of trade-off, it's not really work. It's like the deal of a lifetime.
Right. And I'm glad you stopped me and made that distinction, because I'm thinking of these couple of families. One was just really fascinated and really wanted their lower brain development. Not that they didn't talk about that, but they wanted to get these pathways going for their kiddo, and they saw progress. And so they were like, let's do more. Whereas the other family, it was more of like, oh, here's another like lesson we have to do. And the energy and the kind of inconvenience was present, right?
Well,
it was another thing they had to do through their overscheduled day. They were a very overscheduled family.
Right. They're already, that's what I said. I don't judge people at all. They were already probably in protection mode when they came. But one of the things, and we've done a lot, I don't know when these people did the program since then, but I've really thought a lot about this. A lot of people, if not all, that come to us, and also I think new moms and new parents, have imprinted on them, how do I fix this?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I ask that question, I'm already in protection mode. You cannot fix another person. You cannot fix somebody else's brain. So what we have changed, but the world tells you that, fix your kid nap, this is wrong, or how do I fix this with my baby, he's crying, right? The question that really moves us forward is, as soon as we're aware that we've moved into protection mode, and we teach people how to really notice that, because by the time we're yelling or screaming upset, that's obvious. There's some real subtle ways at the beginning. But now we want to ask the question, how do I want to be? That's it. We just ask, how do I want to be? And the answer for humans, the ideal answer is, I want to be safe, I want to be calm, grounded, and connected. And then that leads us to what we do next, which is like why we offer like 40 different strategies and techniques to get us back to connection mode. But because once you're in connection mode, you're going to run the circuits, which we call the heart to the cortex circuitry, which is what we're supposed to do. And the heart is so important, it develops in utero before the brain. So what does that say in terms of importance? There's more highways from our heart to our brain than our brain to our heart. Our heart has 40,000 sensory neurons. It's like a brain in itself, but we have no access to our heart if we're in protection mode. So the name of the game for all parents, for all of us, is to get back to connection mode. And when those highways are lighting up, you will know exactly what to do in that moment. Those highways will never lead you astray. So part of the problem is when people are looking for solutions, sometimes they already ask a question that's going to lead them actually, from our view, to protection mode. So if I come in and all I want to do is just tell me how to fix my kid's focus, okay? I jokingly say, if I even have in my pocket some focus dust and I give it to you and you sprinkle it all over your kid, you're not still in connection mode, because now you ask me, how do I get them to stop yelling at each other? My kid's fighting. And then I have that dust and I sprinkle it to you. It never ends. When we're in the fix-it mode, we stay in protection mode, which doesn't allow us to show our awesomeness or run the best circuits that we're supposed to between ourselves and our kids and everybody else. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. Yeah. And I can imagine that with, well, as you were saying at the beginning of the episode, like this day and age, we've kind of gone away from more natural ways of, you know, being with our kids and slowing down and taking the time and the like. But especially if you've got a kid that skipped a bunch of stages and are having difficulties, in some ways that's that stress on the family then permeates everyone, right? So
they aren't misreading the message from the world, fix your kid.
Right.
Because the inference is, and again, I'm not faulting anyone. The classroom teacher, she's in protection mode a lot today too. There's so many demands on them, not understanding the classroom is full of kids with incomplete lower brain development. But the message is, fix your kids so the classroom will be better. So you'll be better at home. So really what it means is, so I'll feel better. And what's a kid supposed to do with that? So he reads, his nervous system reads correctly that people are annoyed with him, frustrated, whatever, but that's just going to put the child more in protection mode. It's like, it's not they can't hear that or see that something's wrong. Like, for instance, if you told me, grow taller, I hear you. I'm short, so you don't know me. I'm actually short. Grow taller, Nancy. I hear you. Maybe for a couple of minutes I try, but a brain doesn't take long to figure out that if something is not within reach, it goes into protection mode, which either I fight, flight, or freeze in some way. And then if I don't get it resolved, because it's not a big deal that we go into protection mode, we all do. There's nothing about that the life isn't going to have some stresses, but we want to have the flexibility of a nervous system that goes, I'm in protection mode. False alarm, because 99% of the things are. There's hardly ever a saber-toothed tiger attacking us.
Right.
So then we just go, how do I want to be, and come back. But the majority of people that I meet either never acquired that flexibility of the nervous system because they're, as babies, didn't download that program because their parents were in protection mode, or they just have forgotten it. They've gotten stuck in protection mode. So it's the combination of getting the lower brain work done and teaching the nervous system how to come back from protection mode quickly, easily, is what makes the people say this is like life-changing results.
Right.
So it takes a little time to learn it, but really, like I say, the baby program, one course is a total of 5 hours, and the other one is 2.5 hours. That's not really a lot of time.
No, not at all.
And that's because Plan A, we don't have to go back and also include part of the program of how do we disable the circuitry that we've created now when we were in protection mode and didn't see a way out.
Right.
But again, we can do all that.
Right. And in that course, like with the 5 hours, that's 5 hours of a patient or a parent learning it and then implementing those things bit by bit throughout the days with the baby. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's like, I know it's 6 weeks long. Parents have it's an online program. And we always, if you understand how this whole nervous system works, it learns the best when it's joyful, when it's playful. So everything about brain highways is just fun. You're going
Right.
to learn the information in a fun way, and you're going to learn it in multi-sensory ways. So we use audio clips, we use videos, we use really easy to follow handout. And so basically, over that 6 week period, you somehow find the 5 hours, you log in whenever you want. So you go at your own pace. And we broke it into 20 little sections. So each section's about 15 minutes long. And then we give you how you might integrate it into your day. Because that's the other thing that people are misguided in today's world. We think we have to learn something and master it. And then, of course,
Yes.
we can't master it. So then we just do flight and say, well, I'll come back to this later. What the brain does, and anytime we do a pattern that fits the brain, we're going to actually flow in our own life too. But we come into this role, we're talking to expecting parents. What is labor? It's the pattern of do, rest, do, rest. In other words, we have a contraction and there's a pause. There's a contraction, there's a pause. We don't just push a button and boom, there's the baby.
Right.
But really that rest is what's key to the brain rhythm is integration. So we do a contraction and the brain has a little chance to integrate what you just did. And then another do and another integration. So we present our programs in the same way. It's not about mastering something. It's about giving you a chance to learn a little bit, integrate it. Your brain will do what it needs to do. At that moment, it will learn what it's ready to acquire at that moment. We do a little more. So we make the program that way. And then the developing the brain program is 2.5 hours. And again, probably what's so rich about that is the footage that we have, because how we ended up, I didn't explain how we ended up coming doing Brain Highways Babies. Not only was I getting weary, never tiring of helping people, but that it just seemed like, you say, why did we have to struggle for when we start working with teens, 10, 12 years? And really now I can do all this. So sure enough, my daughter ends up having a baby. This was 18 months ago. And we both go, whoa, we have plan A right in front of us. Because
Yes.
I didn't know any of this when they were little babies, right? So, and then her friends who had babies were like, whoa, we're going to even be better friends now because you're going to show us what to do. And it became this pilot group. And they would come back and go, oh my gosh, that works so easy to calm the baby. Or, oh, now I get what you mean by how you spend time doing tummy time. So we took lots of footage. And I think the footage in that program is so rich because that's how the brain learns. It's so annoying, I think, for someone to tell me as a new mom, you just need to be present with your baby. Seriously, the baby's crying. I'm out of wipes. My husband just called and said he's going out to happy hours with the guys from work. Really? Or my favorite is when people say, oh, just calm down. Who has ever been told to calm down and go, oh, thank you.
Right.
So the footage has to be entertaining, so short, and you see the joy and you see what these things mean and you go, I could do that. And then I go and do that and I go, I did that. And it so worked. So, and that's only 2.5 hours. So I intentionally took the best of all our Plan B program to make it doable both financially and time-wise for a new parent who's probably even way more overstressed in different ways than those that we meet.
Right. Well, and knowing about your program, one for years of what that's more of like the older kids, but it being not an online program, like it was obviously not as accessible for people all over. But now this babies program, I mean, my listeners really are, pregnant, getting ready for a baby, and or brand new parents. So they're plan A ready, right? So I'm really happy this is a program that's available. It's super affordable. It's really, really powerful. Like I've seen the videos you're talking about with your daughter, like on the ground with your grandkid. It's very cute. And exactly as you're saying, like you actually see what's meant with the description of this is what creep looks like. This is what crawl. This is how to work with things. Because I think that's a big challenge that parents have is like, well, my baby hates tummy time. Like I can't, like they can't do it, but they don't know how to overcome that.
Right. Well, not only do we give the specifics of that, and then then that's going to stress us out if I think, well, I'm supposed to be on how many time I don't. But I want people to see the bigger picture of how all this works. And like I say, we have the plan A for us right in front of us. But as my daughter started doing all this stuff with her child from day one, so all the calming techniques that we teach you, all of that is you also do with your child. So they're downloading your calmness because babies read our nervous system 24/7. But they're also, the whole idea of this nervous system is it's this beautiful flow between the mom and the baby, or the dad and the baby. And so as I can say, one of my favorite videos in there is where my grandson at a very early age is already learning how to take deep breaths, and how he uses the deep breaths to actually calm himself. And as he started getting a little older, Kylie started teaching him different techniques that she had done on him so that he could start now doing them to himself. But she started in a playful way, because that's how we teach everything, where he'd do it to a stuffed bear, or he would do it to her. And where you show how you can't even imagine, because I couldn't either, how all this stuff just comes back in a way that's amazing. This last week, my daughter's mother-in-law took a unexpected turn in health, and they were told that they needed to fly out immediately to Vermont if they were going to get a chance to see her. So when they arrive and in the room, she actually only opens her eyes to see her grandson, and she manages to get out the words, "Hello, sunshine," which is what she called him. And then someone says to Kylie, my daughter, "Why don't you sing 'You Are My Sunshine,'" which is what she would sing to him. So you got to picture Kylie's there holding her son. She's trying to sing the song under pretty challenging circumstances. So, tears are rolling down her cheek. And then her son just starts doing one of the connection techniques right on Kylie. And it's that kind of magical connection that's not only possible, but that's how we are intended to interact with each other. It was such a grace.
Wow.
And he knew exactly what he was doing. So maybe we'll have to keep doing Brain Highways toddlers. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But it just is available to everyone. This is not like, oh, only she can do it or only he can do it. We just haven't been taught how the brain works. And it's kind of odd because we use our brain for everything.
Right.
And yet we don't ask that question. So we're wired to do this. We just need someone to kind of take our hand and remind us what we already know.
Right. And get back to basics, as you said, like a lot of the modern parenting ways of being and the contraptions and things takes away from that normal neurological development.
Well, as long as you know what you're doing, we talk about it in the baby program, all the baby apparatus, but just do whatever you're doing with knowing. You know what I'm saying? Is knowing. So it wasn't hard for this pilot group of moms to maybe make some decisions that the norm weren't making because they were so clear on why. So we're never going to tell anybody what to do, but I just want people to know if I'm doing this does this with the brain. If I do this doesn't do this for the brain.
Right.
Sort of as a basic.
Beautiful. Well, tell parents where they can find out about this program. Where can they learn about it?
They can go, our website, brainhighways.com, is very filled with audios, and the homepage has so many entertaining audios that make the connection of the lower brain and how it affects all the different kinds of behaviors later on in life. There's also a screening section on the site where you can go and for free take a, for lack of a better word, quiz assessment to see how your own lower brain is, how a child's lower brain, if it's an older child. There's also the baby section that tells more about this. It tells about the family program. You can spend hours literally on the site and learn a lot.
Great.
And then if you actually live local, you can come to about twice a month. We have what we call free community screening sessions. And if your child's 5 years old or older, you do have to make a reservation for that, but you can come in and have some fun with all the brain apparatus and We'll assess your child and answer specific questions, and we do that as a community service just so that more people can actually learn this information. So if you live in the San Diego area, great to have people come by.
Okay. Well, I'll put all those links in the show notes for all of you listeners, to Brain Highways, to the quizzes, to the program, and then also to the local meetings, so that if you are local, you can check that out. So Nancy, in wrapping up, what's the major take home you'd like the listener to get from what we talked about today?
Adopt Plan A, where your baby has the chance to complete his or her lower brain development during the first year of life, and where you as the parent have learned how to wire your nervous system so that your baby downloads the program of being in connection mode. And then that combo, where you're completing the lower brain development and acquiring a flexible nervous system, is really like giving your baby the winning lottery ticket. I really believe that.
Beautiful. What would you like to say to the little kiddos that are either listening through mama, because they're not yet on this side in the world yet, or they're in mommy's arms right now? What would you like to whisper to them?
I'd say, little one, you have the rest of your life to be upright. So spend your first year on your belly, then creep, then crawl, so you can lay down those really important highways. And then when you do venture out in the world, it's going to be so easy to show and share your awesomeness.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Nancy, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to you parents getting involved and going with Plan A. That's kind of what my listenership's all about. So thank you for sharing all of this, Nancy.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Hi, it's Dr. J again, and I want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I, as a parent, learn a ton from these experts coming on and sharing their wisdom, so I hope you're getting a lot out of it too. And I want to share something else with you. I've created a guide called the 40 Ways to Connect with Your Baby During Pregnancy. It's full of simple things you can do on a day-to-day basis that will help strengthen that bond that you have with your baby. It's a free download. You can go to my website at drjwarren.com/40ways and just enter your email. I'll send it right to you. You can download it and start working on it right away. All of the research that I'm learning in the fields of epigenetics and attachment parenting is showing that the more bonded you are during your pregnancy with your baby, the better the birth is going to go and the better parenting is going to go, because you have that strong foundation, a strong connection to build upon. So go again to my website. It's drjwarren.com/40ways and get that free guide. And again, thanks for listening.